We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
What happens when the Constitution comes into conflict with progressive ideology? When the mere presence of a conservative is considered a threat to a safe space or to a carefully curated and ultimately frail worldview? Well, these are challenges that would have been thought ridiculous just a few years ago. But today, in this sensitive, brave new world, offense is deemed criminal and opposing ideas are apparently quasi-fascist. Dennis Prager, he said, quote, "The combination of modern hyper-parenting and left-leaning professors and administrators has allowed students to remake universities into large-scale editions of the island in Lord of the Flies." End quote. And he was right. The hunt, the derision, the violence that follows from the supposedly tolerant lashing out at all those who disagree with their idea of what the world should be is not just an occurrence, it's become commonplace. William Golding, he wrote his novel Lord of the Flies, and he said, "Fancy thinking the beast was something you could hunt and kill. You knew, didn't you? I'm part of you. Close, close, close. I'm the reason why it's no go. Why things are what they are," end quote. And he concluded with a thought that should shake us all, especially those who favor this progressive intolerance. It was the stark moment when the lost children came to the realization that, quote, "maybe there is a beast. Maybe it's only us," end quote. Welcome to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's show, we're asking why podcast host and media sensation Ben Shapiro is considered a harmful presence in the halls of the progressives, why the New York Times is starting a news desk that monitors what it calls right-wing media. We'll also be asking why answers to where the funding for Joe Biden's student loan giveaway comes from and what impact such largesse will have on the broader economy. And we'll be talking liberty with Scott Cosenza as yet more challenges to the First Amendment rock America. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Hastings, Michigan on WBCH 1220 AM and 93.1 FM. Thank you for being here. And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Jack the Ripper, the Marquis de Sade, son of Sam and Ben Shapiro. Yes, you heard that right. Ben Shapiro is now the boogeyman of the left. What has happened to this soft-spoken and quick-spoken presenter who has the left in such a tizzy? Well, to join us on that, we're joined by Liberty Nation's editor-in-chief, Miss Lisa K. Donner. Thank you ever so much for being here, Lisa.
Hi, Mark. That's got to go down as one of the best introductions in a while.
Well, yeah, poor Ben Shapiro. So I think everybody's familiar with Ben Shapiro. He's the top man over at the Daily Wire. He's very much in the conservative camp. And he really is one of the most inoffensive and well-spoken people around. So why is he now the boogeyman of the left?
Well, this is really funny. So last week, there's a group called the Podcast Movement. It holds a national conference every year, kind of like an expo. And the 2022 expo was held in Dallas, Texas. And the Daily Signal, which Mr. Shapiro co-owns, plunked down $10,000 to get their own booth, right?
Right,
Sounds
yeah, pretty normal.
kind of normal, right? Well, and let me just say it makes sense for them to do that because Shapiro's podcast has about 15 million downloads a month.
Yeah, I mean, Shapiro and Joe Rogan, they're both big beasts in the podcasting world. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly. I mean, his program's a blockbuster. So anyway, Shapiro decides to make a cameo. He comes into the conference. He goes to the Daily Signal booth. He shakes hands, signs a few autographs, takes a couple pictures with people that like his show, and then leaves. That's it. Nothing else.
All right.
Wow.
Now he did this while sporting a pair of matching golden AR-15s, presumably, Lisa.
Yeah, you would think, or a MAGA hat or something. Anyway, the fur began to fly. Somebody tweeted, Hey, podcast movement, what the F? As a trans person, a queer person, as someone with a uterus, this does not make me feel welcome. This does not make me feel safe. Well, without so much as a beat, the organizers of the event, the podcast movement, tweeted the following, and I've got to read this to you because you're not going to believe it. So this is the podcast movement. Hi, folks. We owe you an apology before sessions kick off for the day. Yesterday afternoon, Ben Shapiro briefly visited the expo area near the Daily Wire booth. Though he was not registered or expected, we take full responsibility for the harm done by his presence. So it's
What
really
is the harm
incredible.
here? Do they detail what the harm is? Or is it merely someone's presence that is causing
It's
alleged
apparently
harm?
just his presence. Then they go on to say, and they had another tweet in between, but then they go on to say, just to clarify, no TDW, that's the Daily Wire representatives, were scheduled to appear on panels, and Shapiro remained in the common space and did not have a badge. If you have questions, we're here to talk. Thank you for reading, and we hope you enjoy us from here on out. So, people were wondering, is this a meme? Is this political
Mm.
humor? Are they kidding? I mean, Shapiro's very presence was found worthy of an apology.
Well, I think that's actually something that we're seeing a lot, aren't we? When people, like for example, when anybody on the conservative right, when they turn up, they get, as Maxine Waters suggested, they get shouted down, they get pushed back upon. And it's really become just a massive splurge of intolerance for any other views. And that really strikes me because this was a podcasting event. Now, podcasts, if they are anything at all, are an opportunity for all of us on all sides of the political spectrum to learn about new ideas, hear different opinions. And the fact that one of the big beasts of podcasting should be so unwelcome at an event that hosts and promotes podcast, doesn't that strike you as missing the entire point of the media?
Well, this is more from the oh so tolerant left, note sarcasm.
Mm.
The response from the right was very quick. The Federalist Molly Hemingway, who I have to say I disagree with her not very often. She tweeted, quote, "You sound like completely insane people. What in the world is wrong with you? Is this a joke? You couldn't tolerate Ben freaking Shapiro? Are you a child, an anti-Semite, an anti-Semitic child? How do you function in society if you can't tolerate Ben Shapiro?" That was just one of the best responses
Yeah,
we had.
yeah, I don't think I've heard Ben Shapiro do anything other than argue his point with reason. Now, you may not agree with his points, but he's hardly a dangerous figure unless you consider ideas dangerous.
Well, it's interesting because the libertarian magazine Reason came up with, are we getting into crazy territory if the mere presence of a mainstream conservative podcaster triggers apoplexy? I mean, this does not bode well for the future, Mark.
No.
Uh, you know, are we going to come to the day when conservatives have to go off the plane, off the bus, can't sit at the lunch counter, got to have separate bathrooms? I thought we've been there, done that.
Yeah, it really does seem that behind the fake tolerance, there's really a regressive mindset there, which is all about exclusion, hate, and bias. Yeah. So where does it go from here? Has Ben Shapiro reacted to this? And do you think that podcasters who would ordinarily have booths at this event, do you think they'll be thinking about spending their money elsewhere?
Well, look, Shapiro is a class act. I mean, he really handled this very well. He didn't, make a spectacle of himself, and he could have. I mean, but I think this speaks to the segregation, the politics of segregation. Segregating people based on their political beliefs. It's just a road we don't want to travel, and I think people being triggered by someone else's mere presence when they didn't have anything to do with them, it's just really beyond the pale. It would be funny if it weren't so sad.
There are no safe spaces from ideas. Lisa K. Dunner, thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Mark.
And we'll be right back with Lisa after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I can
others.
do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Getting noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.